Okay, good evening, everyone. This is Sachin Karnik from the Angel Wing LLC. Today is the 5th of February 2025. We are continuing our technical presentation and then subsequent interactive discussion on the concepts that are presented in the Foundations of Angel Wing Volume 1 book, which is on self-mastery. We're going to continue from where we left off last time today. And we'll be talking about episodic memory and the self. So this is the paragraph we have been looking at, which is the third entry in the book. I'm just going to read this a little bit here, and then the part that is highlighted in blue there is what we'll be focusing on today. So the realm of self-psychology is a nuanced and multifaceted academic sphere that centers around the cognitive and affective portrayals of individual identity, and more aptly described, the subject of lived experience. What does that mean? Very quickly, we have our experience is a living experience. It's not just some theory, it's our life actually. We're living it. So the field of self-psychology, the realm of this academic area, it centers around cognitive and affective portrayals of individual identity. We talked about this last time in somewhat detail, what all that means. Its roots run deep into the bedrock of modern psychology, where the seminal understanding of the self is carved into the dichotomous notion of the I as a subjective observer, while the me emerges as the observing entity. We talked about this last time also, the I, me, and mine. Now, in contemporary psychological paradigms, the importance of the self is highlighted across various human faculties, encompassing motivation, cognition, affect, and social identity. So the psychology has paradigms, many different ways of trying to understand what the self actually is. And you would have to look at human faculties, things like motivation, emotion, cognition, social identity, etc. So this perspective borrows heavily from the philosophical musings of John Locke, who posited that the genesis of self lies in episodic memory. So let's look at this now today, what we mean by this, what this possibly can be. So John Locke was a 17th century philosopher and renowned for his theories on personal identity. He argued that our identities are shaped by our experiences, particularly through episodic memory. Right from childhood, we have a built-up memory structure. That memory structure is built up episodically, meaning different experiences are built on each other through different episodes in different time frames. And that's what builds or shapes our identity. So a couple of points here on John Locke's the identity theory. John Locke posited that personal identity is fundamentally tied to consciousness and memory. He argued that it is not the physical body that determines identity, but rather the continuity of consciousness over time. According to Locke, it is our episodic memory that defines who we are, enabling us to connect our past experiences with our present self. Right? So couple of points here. When he uses the word consciousness, it's probably, I don't think he's using it in a spiritual sense. He's talking about the overall integrated sense of me that develops. That's probably what he's referring to, but we'll have to look into that some more. Now, episodic memory is where our experiences are stored. And the storage of them, the cross-connection of them is what builds a psychological consciousness. And then that connects with our present experience. And that's what, is our personal sense of who I am, our sense of identity. So that's the basic idea there. Now, experience and identity formation. Locke emphasized the role of experiences in shaping one's identity. Obviously, life is all experiences. Without experiences, we wouldn't have any identity. So he believed that memories of personal experiences contribute to the development of a self-concept. The self-concept, the sense that I exist. That is my concept of who I am. right? So the memories that we have of which are personal, memories of personal experiences, meaning that we have our individualized experiences and we have our own memories. They are essential in the development of my sense of who I am, my own self-concept. Very interesting. This perspective suggests that our identity is not static, but evolves as we collect new experiences and memories throughout our lives. Identity is not static in that sense. Okay, yes. So hopefully you can hear me. The identity is not static. So let's be clear about this point. Static versus a fluid identity that is changing. Now, when we use the word identity, we have a sense that it's static. But what he's saying is that identity is not static, but evolves as we collect new experiences and memories throughout our lives. So it could be changing every second, every moment of time. There is a flux there of identity. It's not a fixed sense, although there are many theories in psychology that talk about identity formation as being a formed identity and somewhat stable identity. Obviously that would be necessary, at least at some level, but it may not be completely static. All right, so that's that point about the identity being, not necessarily static. Episodic memory, these are the points to keep in mind. And then there's the critique and the influence. While Locke's theories have significantly influenced modern philosophy, they also invite criticism. Some argue that his reliance on memory overlooks the role of social context and shared narratives in identity formation. Regardless, his ideas remain foundational in debates surrounding personal identity, influencing fields from psychology to law. So obviously, we know that who we are is in the context of so many others. We understand that. We know that. So memory is not the only thing. Memory doesn't form in isolation. Memory always forms in social context, right? So the narrative, shared narrative, there's a narrative, there's a story. It's a personal autobiographical story, if I'm not saying that word right. It's a narrative about ourselves that is there right from childhood until the present moment, and that keeps developing, right? So the points covered so far is about John Locke. His personal identity's perspective is that there is episodic memories, which we know that there are. They are what build the identity. The identity is not necessarily static, although in Sachin's commentary here, I think there is a sense that it is static. It has to be stable at least, otherwise one would have a dispersed identity, couldn't function. So, but it seems to be fluid. It's built based on experiences, so that's the other point. And then the personal narratives are formed based on the context of the society, the family, the external surroundings, etc. Right? So these are the points covered so far. Now let's go further. Episodic memory refers to the ability to recall past or personal experiences and specific events from one's past. That's a recall capacity. Our brain, our mind has this recall capacity. And as we recall it, we get, we kind of are in that world. So this type of memory includes contextual details such as time and place. Right? So we have the ability to recall unless there's damage to the brain or mind or some trauma. And this ability is necessary. All right. Episodic memory. Now, the nature of episodic memory is such. Episodic memory is a subset of explicit memory that enables individuals to recall specific past events along with associated context, including time, place, and details surrounding the experience. Any experience we have, it occurred at a particular time, it occurred at a particular place. We have the ability to recall it. We can think about it. But in many ways, we are getting at times stuck inside there. And that's where the self-mastery idea really comes into the picture. But anyway, this is part of our psychological identity. So this capacity to recall, this capacity is or this capability is crucial for personal identity as it shapes the narrative of an individual's life. The shaping of the narrative is based on this ability to recall the events, and then they kind of reconnect again and they form who we are. The more we think about the past in many ways with the people, with the stories and circumstances and all that, everything that's happened, and as we recall it, we're building our own narrative of it. So that's the nature, that's some of what is meant by episodic memory. The vividness of such memories can diminish over time, leading to challenges in accurately recalling past events. As time goes on, many things we don't remember accurately because time takes its toll on that vividness of recall. So that's another interesting aspect of this. And then, of course, there's the deterioration of the brain and things like that, and the whole neurological pieces in this. Okay, now the role of contextual details. Contextual details in episodic memories serve as anchors, facilitating successful recall by providing cues that trigger memory retrieval. How can memories be retrieved? Because of cues. These are triggers. So these are called contextual details because they're context dependent. We smell something, or we see a restaurant, or I don't know, someone, let's say, has a smoking habit and they see an advertisement for a cigarette. That becomes a trigger, becomes a cue. So these details are often sensory in nature, incorporating sights, sounds, and emotions experienced during the event. Let's say someone, belongs to a church for a long period of time and then doesn't go there for 1 or 2 years. Now, all of a sudden, they remember that, or they see it, or they see a picture of it, or they recall it somehow, right? So there's a cue, there's a trigger. So this is called the role of contextual details, technically. So these details interplay between the richness, there is the interplay between the richness of contextual details and the strength of the memory. Now, you have 2 points here. The context-dependent details, like, for example, if I want to remember my dad who passed away some years back, I can remember so many memories about him in the context, in terms of my own relationship with him, my own memories of him, and so many contexts. The music he liked to the music he liked, the place he used to like to sit in the home, the conversations I had with him, so many things, right? So the interplay between the richness of contextual details and the strength of the memory, can influence. Hold on one second. We have somebody here coming in here. There we go. We have Shuparna coming in. All right. So the interplay between the richness of the contextual details and the strength of the memory can influence how well one can access and recount experiences in the future. I want to explain that. Let's break that down. First of all of our memories are in context. There's no doubt about that. They don't exist without some context, environmental context, relationship context. Maybe it's a context of the place where one is sitting, one is walking in nature. There's always context, right? So there's contextual details with every single memory. Point number 1. Okay, now, but then there's also the strength of the memory. Meaning, how strongly is that memory held inside? Some memories are not held that strongly. We know this. Things that we don't place much importance on, we may not even remember. We may have had a conversation with someone a year ago and, I had a conversation with somebody. I don't know what it was about. Wasn't that important. But if the importance is given, the significance is given, there's much more strength to the memory, right? So memory is not just memory. I mean, memory is memory, but there is the strength of memory. There's the weakness of memory. It's on a continuum that every memory is held with a certain strength. I'm going to talk about that a little bit. See if we can break that, understand a little bit. It's very interesting. The strength with which we are holding a memory is developed based on many factors. One factor would be the significance we give to it. That's one factor. Another factor would be how often it is repeated. How often is the experience repeated? Then that becomes much more solidified. That's another factor. Third factor is the emotion connected with the memory, with the experience itself. So the emotion or the overall experience in general, like for example, in addictions, when someone, let's just say, for example, when someone, is using an illicit drug, cocaine or heroin or methamphetamine or something like that, it's the experience that is stored inside memory, inside episodic memory, is part of explicit memory, and that pops up again where the demand for the repetition of the experience pops up again, right? So the strength with which that experience is held is very, very, very high in all the addictions. Again, that's another area that we cover in Angel Wing, in another area of Angel Wing. But I'm just mentioning that here. Now, this is true even with very traumatic memories. We talk about this all the time, PTSD and all that stuff, right? Some massive trauma has happened. And the mind is traumatized by that. That's the word trauma. The word trauma has, I mean, if you really kind of understand, if we really break that up further, it has to do with the intense strength, with the high level of strength with which the mind holds the trauma or that experience that we are calling trauma. Because that's just another word, right? It's a construct. Remember this. The word trauma is a construct. The word memory is a construct. The word episodic is a construct. Everything we're talking about is a construct. It's a constructed idea in the minds of researchers that may refer to something actually existing in reality. And we've talked about this now on many occasions, what are constructs. Hopefully that's very clear to those who are listening to this and following this clearly. As I mentioned before, these ideas are not discussed unless you're in a doctoral program somewhere. You hardly ever hear about constructs and things like that even in master's level programs, right? But it's not hard to understand. Everyone should understand that these are developed ideas. So the strength with which we are holding a memory has very much to do with all of these factors: significance, the repetition, the emotion behind it, the recall, because sometimes we recall something so deeply, but it's not that only a person is recalling. They're identifying where that memory has penetrated and become solidified inside the psychological matrix, has become part of the me that we were talking about last time. So I'm just giving you some of my commentary on this, on these ideas. There's a lot behind. There's some 400 slides in this particular series, actually. So it's not just about covering the material. There's a lot of material, but we need to be able to reflect it. And I would like to give just Sachin's commentary on this, that the awareness of the strength of memory has great benefit for us in discovering our natural freedom. That how strongly am I holding this memory, and why am I doing so? For what reason? What am I getting out of that? What benefit does it have? But see, that's the identification. That's the absorption, the engulfment in memory. Now, a couple more points. Self-mastery, which we will be talking about in the PTP program in year number 3, opening the doorway into self-mastery. That's the 3rd year. But I'll mention a few points here. One of the key indicators that someone has reached self-mastery is the ability to dive into one's memories, into the depth of one's memories, and then to be able to come right out of it without getting traumatized, stuck, harmed, and with gaining even more insight and wisdom. That is an indication of true self-mastery with regards to memory. In most cases, when we recall something from the past, there is a strong tendency to relive, particularly with the repetition of experiences that we want. Remember the TEMDE, thought, emotion, memory, desire, energy. The desires that are within us are what? What is desire? For most of desires are repetition of wanting to re-experience what we have experienced before. And that has a great purpose in life also. For example, if I'm having a cup of coffee, which I do right now, why did I select this at this time? What was the reason for that? Because I've had it before many, 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 many times. And in the evening, maybe, or in the late afternoon, like to have half a cup of coffee. It's good, you know. But why? Well, first of all, there's desire for it. There's memory of it. There's a sensation experience. All of that is there. There's sensory experiences there. So it's all connected together. You know, the past experience is what I want again now. Right? Now, let's look at that in terms of relationships, which we talked about yesterday in the PTP. You know, that we have relationship. Our entire mind is filled. It's a web of relationship structure. Mind doesn't exist without relationships. It cannot exist without relationships. Language cannot exist without it. There's no mind without relationship. There's no neurological development. There's no pruning of the neurons. There's no, the synaptic connections, like Thomas Hebbian. What is it? I forgot the last name. It's called Hebbian theory. That just, the neurons that fire together, wire together, that it has to do with association. That the brain cannot actually develop or mature without experience through the senses. So the maturation of the brain is dependent on the stimulation of the senses. But the type of maturation, the type of impressions in the subtle body, in the Vedanta tradition, we call that the subtle body, which is the Shukshma Sharira, which means the subtle body, which is mind, which is subtler than the brain in some sense, that has impressions. So those are our subjective experiences also. So hence they are developed within the memory structure, and inside that memory structure there is, the memory structure is a web. It's a massive, massive, massive web. Right. So these are some ideas. It is almost 7:30. Let me just cover just one or two more things I just want to get to here before I stop, because I don't want to overwhelm all of us too much here. There's one more point here. Implications for identity. All right. Episodic memories play a critical role in shaping self-identity. They inform how individuals perceive themselves based on past experiences. This is the key point. We see ourselves based on our past experiences. Cognitive psychology argues that the integration of episodic memories contributes to the continuity of the self over time. If our memories are not integrated, there is no psychological self that is developed. It causes a lot of problems. There's disorders of all kinds in psychology with regards to this also. So moreover, the ability to recall personal narratives enhances emotional well-being and resilience in dealing with present challenges. That's a practical point. It's kind of what I was saying before about self-mastery. The ability to recall personal narratives. Yeah, we have to have that ability. Assuming our brain, our body is energetically functioning in the right way. That's fine. We need that ability, but to be able to recall personal narratives enhances emotional well-being. Let's put a caveat there. It's the ability to recall without getting entangled, without getting stuck. That is where we want to get to that point. Ability to recall personal narratives, not just somebody else's or some general ideas. Personal narratives enhances emotional well-being and resilience. Why is that? Why does it enhance emotional well-being? Because our emotions get strengthened by diving into the past and then coming back out of the past. And so we gain strength emotionally when we are not stuck in the past, but we can make use of the past. So there's a lot to be said, and that makes us resilient. And that makes us resilient in dealing with our present life. All right, so it is exactly 7:30 at this point. I want to try to keep the time. I'll give you an opportunity to talk because this can go on for hours. I want to not cover too much material all at one time. So I'll stop the recording here and then give everyone an opportunity to make some comment.